This is our very first video lecture, and we're going to start with Chapter 1. And there's just a few pages from Chapter 21. It's just on thermoregulation. So before we get started, I just wanted to welcome you to the class. I'm really excited to have you here. And just a few things to help you as we go through the semester. As you'll see in the Canvas course as you've been looking around, you can download the PowerPoints if you want to take notes as you're listening to the videos. I think that's a great idea. And in the PowerPoints, as you'll see as we go through, you really want to pay attention and study the things that are highlighted in red or italicized. Also pay attention to things that are fill in the blanks, any questions on the slides, and then also pictures, because those are the things that are most likely to show up on the tests. Okay, so, and I do like pictures. I'm a very visual learner, and so sometimes pictures do end up on the exam. You might have to identify things or maybe explain what's going on. And so if you're studying, don't ignore the pictures. Be able to explain what's going on in the pictures. Also, you can download the chapter study guide and be able to answer those questions and make sure you know what all of those vocabulary words mean as well. And that'll help you focus your studying too. And then your textbook is a great resource as well. So the chapter summaries at the back of each chapter, really good because it has all the main ideas. And then also go through and read each of the chapters. Maybe skim it before you listen to the video, and then you can go back and do a more thorough reading. The glossary at the back of the book can also help you. If you're not familiar with a vocabulary word, you can look up the definition. And then also in Canvas, with each chapter, there's a vocabulary practice little Quizlet. So that'll help if you want to practice quizzing yourself on the vocabulary words. That's a great place to do that because a lot of the test questions are based on, do you know what the vocabulary word means? And if you don't know what the word means, then you can't get the question right. So I would recommend going through those and testing yourself and seeing how well you know those vocabulary words too. Okay, so we'll just start with our chapter outline here, and we're just going to start with just an introduction and just defining what physiology is, since that's the class we're in. And probably a lot of you have already taken anatomy already, but if you haven't, that's okay. It's probably next on your list. But there is a difference between anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the study of the structure of the body. And the word anatomy, if you haven't taken a medical terminology class, I highly recommend taking one of those. Ana, that prefix means a part, and otomy means to cut. And so the word anatomy literally means to cut apart, which is exactly what they do in anatomy. And so in anatomy, you're concerned with, for example, looking at the muscles. So maybe you're looking at the biceps muscle here, and you're concerned with, well, where does it originate and where is it attaching? Where is it located in the body? And where's the triceps muscle? And what's this bone here called? So that's what anatomy is looking at. Physiology is very different. Physiology is really different from anatomy because we're looking at studying the function of the body. So anatomy, you're looking at, well, where's the biceps muscle located? And physiology, we're interested in, well, how does the muscle actually work? How does it contract? So here's a picture of the actin and myosin contractile proteins that are found inside of a muscle cell. And we'll talk about how these actually move and make the muscle contract later on in chapter 12. A really important statement that you should know and that you probably have heard in some of your other biology classes is that function depends on structure. And another way to say that is physiology depends on anatomy. So for example, if we have a heart, its function or physiology depends on its structure or anatomy. And in some diseases, if you change the anatomy or the structure of the heart, for example, then that will change the function or the physiology of the heart. So for example, let's say that our patient has a heart attack. And what happens in a heart attack is we end up getting a blood clot in one of the coronary arteries here. So let's say we get a blood clot here, and we end up blocking the blood flow to the heart muscle that's on the other side. And that kills off the heart muscle. And unfortunately, heart muscle does not regenerate and regrow. So if the person survives the heart attack, then that dead heart muscle gets replaced with scar tissue. And scar tissue cannot contract. So now we've got this section of heart muscle here that is now scar tissue instead of muscle. And so now when the heart is trying to beat and squeeze the blood out and pump it around the body, it doesn't have as much muscle as it should, and now it's got this patch of scar tissue. Well, we've changed the structure of the heart by replacing some of the muscle with scar tissue, and now the heart isn't going to be able to pump the blood around as well. And so what happens is the patient is going to eventually go into heart failure. And that's unfortunately what happens with some of our patients that have heart attacks. And there are a lot of other diseases where you end up changing the structure of an organ, and that ends up changing the function or the physiology of the organ, and that's what ends up causing problems and disease in the patient. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the different organ systems separately throughout the semester, but I want you to kind of remember the overall big picture, and that all of the organ systems in the body are working together, okay? And so if you do have one organ system that is not functioning correctly, that will cause other organ systems to not work correctly either. Okay, so let me give you an example. So if you have a patient whose kidneys are failing, that will actually cause their muscles to be really weak and tired. And so if they go up a flight of stairs, they're going to be exhausted and huffing and puffing by the time they get up the stairs and have to sit down. And so you're like, well, how can kidney failure cause the muscles to be all weak and tired? Well, if we kind of work our way from the kidneys over to the muscle here, let's see how that works. Okay, so the muscles, in order to generate ATP, the energy they need to contract, to move you up the stairs, they need oxygen. Okay, so we need blood to the red blood cells to deliver oxygen to them so they can make ATP, and then they can contract and move you up the stairs. Okay, but what happens in a person who has kidney failure is that they have anemia. Okay, and anemia just means you don't have enough red blood cells. And if you don't have enough red blood cells in your blood, you don't have enough hemoglobin to carry the oxygen to your muscles, and so you can't deliver enough oxygen there. and then you're not going to be able to make enough ATP, and so you run out pretty quickly and you just do fermentation, and so you get all tired and weak and you're out of breath by the time you get to the top of the stairs. So how are the kidneys involved in affecting the red blood cells and causing anemia? Well, the kidneys actually produce a hormone. They produce a hormone called erythropoietin, which we're going to talk about later. You don't have to memorize that right now, but we'll come back to this later. So erythro means red, talking about the red blood cells, and the word poietin, that means to form. And so this hormone produced by the kidneys travels to the red bone marrow, which on this skeleton is colored dark red. So you can see like in the pelvis, upper part of the femurs, upper part of the humeri, we've got some in the ribs, sternum, a little bit in the skull there. So the erythropoietin will tell the red bone marrow that, hey, we're running low on red blood cells. Go ahead and make some more red blood cells. Well, if your kidneys are not working well and failing, they will not make enough of the hormone erythropoietin, which means your red bone marrow doesn't get the signal to make enough red blood cells, and so then you become anemic, and then you don't deliver enough red blood cells, enough oxygen to your muscles, and that's what makes your muscles all weak and tired, and you get out of breath going up the stairs. Okay, so you can see how your kidneys can actually affect your blood, which can then affect how your muscles work. So the organ systems all work together, and if you have one not working right, it will affect other organ systems in the body. So you'll see more of that as you get into your healthcare classes, although in this class we're just going to be talking about them individually.